Stagg 25A. The last time we talked about Stagg on the channel, I compared 24A all the way through 24D in one of the very first videos on this channel. That'll be up in the corner if you want to check that one out. It's November, and Stagg 25A has finally shown up in Washington. 25C has just started to release on parts of the East Coast. We're always behind, but the fact that Buffalo Trace isn't releasing these the way they used to is kind of aggravating. However, we've got the new 25A. Let's crack into this bad boy, do a 2-minute Tuesday, give you the tasting notes, give you a rating, talk about whether or not you should hunt this one. So let's give a couple details while we let that pour rest. It's no small secret that I'm a big fan of Stagg. I've been slowly kind of collecting almost all of them all the way back to batch 10. Eventually, I'll do a giant gauntlet. We'll see how that goes. But 25A comes in at 126.5 proof, and as always, it's uncut, unfiltered. It's a barrel-proof product from Buffalo Trace's mash bill 1. So mash bill 1 is the low rye mash bill, which means it's 10% or less rye overall in the mash. Not as spicy in theory as some things should have more characteristic fruity notes, which is kind of common in Staggs, but they have a wide range. Every batch is a little different. There are some that are off profile, there are lots that are on profile. Who cares? They all taste great. Usually you can't go wrong with a Stagg, but how well does this compare to some of the previous year's Staggs? And is it going to be one of those ones that's so good, we need to track this thing down? So, with that being said, let's get into the 2-minute Tuesday for Stagg 25A. Color's looking good, pretty typical bourbon-y color, what you would expect out of something like a Stagg product. Lots of little legs forming over here, so pretty good viscosity, which we would expect. Let's get into the nose. Right away in the nose, I think the thing that's most important to me is that despite being 126.5 proof, it's not heavy ethanol. It's got lots of nose, there's lots of character there, but it's not punching in that proof level in a ethanol-y kind of way that some Staggs do with their nose. It's an aggressive bourbon. But what I do get right away is like kind of a little grape Kool-Aid thing. It's got a lovely brown sugar, kind of getting into a caramel thing that's in there. So nice fruit and darker sweetness mixed. There's definitely a little bit of the oak influence, kind of that sweeter oak from the wood that's present, which is really the hallmarks of a lot of Buffalo Trace. There's not as much of the cherry that a lot of people will typically get in there, and it's kind of a little bit of like a cola, so almost like a grape Kool-Aid meets cola thing with some brown sugar and caramel underneath. Sounds weird, I know, but it smells fantastic, and I can't wait to get into it. So let's get into the palate. While the nose may not have a lot of punch, palate certainly does. It is letting you know every bit of that 126.5 proof. What I find interesting is that grape Kool-Aid note that is really prevalent on the nose is extremely subtle on the palate. Big upfront note is kind of a little bit of like caramel and cola. Cream soda meets a cola kind of thing going on. It's nice, do not get me wrong, but it's definitely giving you a hug all the way through. It's letting you know it's there. The fruit is there. That little bit of grape is not really very much cherry for me personally, but that grape is there, but it's really, really, really soft. This is definitely dominated by the more like brown sugar, caramel, and kind of cola notes. As you get toward the mid palate and the finish, that's where the oak and a little bit of the barrel char comes in. You get a kind of a little bit of a spicy note, but really it comes through more as like the big Kentucky hug. It's just letting you know, hi, I'm a Stagg and I'm gonna punch you some. So let's get into an overall score for the Stagg 25A. I'm gonna give it a 79. It's letting you know. It's got some authority to it. It's got a couple of real big in-your-face notes, but it's not the most complex thing ever. And I've always found that to be the case with most Stagg Juniors. That tends to be why I like them. I like those 2 to 3 really big punchy notes that are up front, letting me know like, yeah, we're gonna hit you with this. We're gonna hit you hard, but you're gonna like it. This one goes for a little rye because it starts sweet up front and very kind of soda-like, and then it shifts and becomes more wood-influenced. And it definitely lets you know that authoritative kind of Kentucky hug coming in and heating the palate up. Pretty interesting, but not as fruity as that nose was, which kind of makes me feel sad because that grape note is just tiny, and that's one of my favorite notes in Stagg is those grape and cherry notes. I don't think this was as good as last year's 24D or 24B. I think it's better than the 24A was. Definitely better than 24C for my palate. Now, I know a lot of people who love the 24C, but for my palate, it was really muted and not what I expect out of a Stagg. I like the fact that this is going back to some of those kind of cola-y notes that tend to come out of some Staggs. The last one that I really got that impression from was batch 18, but that was very like all day cherry cola, and I love that batch a lot. And this has got a kind of reminiscent to it, but it's instead of that cherry, there's more of that caramely cream soda kind of thing as the undertone to the cola that's that extra bit of sweetness as opposed to the cherry notes. The grape that was on the nose, and it's still there when I go back and smell it. Yeah, it's there on the nose, but it's not there on the palate for me, which really kind of makes me sad because I feel like if you had that nice fruity sweetness on top of everything else, that would be the elevation that would get it up into the like kind of 80s level scores, probably something like an 81, 82 as opposed to a 79. Should you hunt this? Yeah. In general, I think if you can find a Stagg at or very close to MSRP, which MSRP in Washington now, basically after taxes, is about $100 a bottle. So for me, like if I was finding it for say like 125, 100 to 125 in that range, I'm pretty happy with that personally. Secondary is getting toward about like 150 on most Staggs, and that's kind of about the ceiling that I would ever pay, but it would have to be a really, really good batch in some of the more recent ones. Now, we're not going to talk about like some of the big heavyweights like 12 or 9 or any of those much older, incredibly hard to find batches, but for a more recent batch, something that you're potentially going to find on a shelf or find at a local mom and pop store, I feel like that 100 to 125 range is okay for me, but I don't know that I would ever go much past that nowadays, just because Stagg is becoming more and more available. We're seeing more and more of it come out, so in theory, you should be paying MSRP. And in some states, MSRP is still like $70. So for those of you who get it for that, I'm jealous. If you had your choice of multiple batches, would I take the 25A over most of the 24s or maybe even some of the 23s? Yes and no, right? Like I said, I think the 24D is one of the better ones in a long time. This 25A is pretty good, but there's a little bit of extra complexity and interesting things going on in both 24B and D for my palate personally. But I do know that some of my friends who are big Stagg fans absolutely love this and think that it's one of the better ones that's been released in a couple of years. So it's all about your palate, right? Everybody's palate's a little different. You might get big cherry out of this and I don't, right? It's one of the things that's really beautiful about whiskey is we can all taste the same whiskey and taste very, very different things. That's one of the things that I personally love about whiskey. So in that regard, should you pick up a Stagg if you have an opportunity? If the price is right, absolutely. It's something great. It makes a wonderful Friday night pour, or when you're feeling like you need something a little more punchy, break out a bottle of Stagg. It's a lot of fun. I hope you have enjoyed this review. I'll be trying to find the 25B and C whenever the heck they make it to Washington State. I have to give a big shout out and thank you to my buddy Alex for picking this up for me because I did not find this. My friend Alex did at his local grocery store, and he was like, "Hey man, do you need one?" And I was like, "I would really like one." He's like, "I got you." I was like, "I love having friends." So again, thanks Alex. If you have had the most recent batch of Stagg, maybe you've had the B and the C, I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you've never had a Stagg in your life, I'm sorry, but you should consider subscribing because when we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to give away a couple of bottles each, their single barrel being one of them, maybe a few others, and who knows, if I get super, super lucky and find something really cool, maybe I'll give away like some sample packs of some of the other Staggs that I own out of my collection. I did it before at 500 subscribers. Maybe we'll do it again. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.